Now the next project on the FZR restoration is very simple, but still one of the things that's going to be a little challenging because I don't have the material here. I'm going to have to go to Lowe's and buy the material. When I made the list of stuff I wanted to do on the FZR during the restoration, one of the things was to make some lowering links. I looked on eBay many times and on the places that sell Pingle, for instance, and nobody makes the parts, the lowering links for this bike. Nobody has them in stock anyway. Now on the R1, it wasn't long after I bought the bike and I got the lowering link. Billy Sargent came over, graciously helped me set it up, and I have loved it. I love being able to put my feet on the ground at stoplights and whatnot. Now on some of the modern bikes, lowering links are not even part of the suspension, so that's not going to be one of the choices I have on some bikes. On the 750 there are some link arms, but I've never seen any kits for lowering the seat. And about an inch is all you need to make a bike really comfortable. Now one of the nice things, and I've heard people say the opposite, oh, it changes the geometry, and but you know what? I have never found that. I've had lowering links on several bikes, and I've never had even the slightest issue. If anything, I would think it might even be better. And I've noticed a lot of people, when they lower the back, typically an inch, they lower the forks an inch. They do it for looks, so that the whole bike looks like a lowrider or whatever. I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm just doing it because when I'm on the bike and I pull up to a light, I like the feeling of having both of my feet on the ground, not being on tiptoes. And I've told people that are shorter than I am, like Chris, for instance, that would be a good choice on her R6. Well, I see when she pulls up to a light, you're on tiptoes. And it actually, at some point, can be dangerous. But I'm going to get these lowering links made today. The only problem is I don't have the material here. I've got to run over to Lowe's and get the material. And there are some bikes like the RD. You can buy these shocks that we have on the RD. You can buy them in various lengths. You can buy shocks that are an inch shorter. And it's only about an inch you can deal with, or else it just gets crazy. You've got to deal with other things that hit each other when the suspension's under full compression. But you can always get that first inch free. And this bike, what I noticed with this is especially true. I have two seats for this bike. What I did, I made a seat. I cut out 1 inch of the foam off the bottom of the seat. Got on the bike for the next ride, and I was so happy. I said, wow, because as you cut the foam off the seat, the bars seem to be a little bit higher. A little more comfortable in both things, and if your knees aren't getting crushed, like if you're 7 feet tall, that's a good compromise. And I do have a spare seat for almost every bike. In fact, I do have one for more than one. I have 5 or 6 seats for the R1. So anyway, I want to get out to Lowe's early, pick up the material, and get this job started. It's a relatively straightforward job anybody should be able to do. Here's the biggest clue. If you have a Suzuki, you go out on the internet, everybody in the world makes lowering kits for Suzuki. For Yamaha, not so much. And when you call the companies, they never have the ones for the FZR in stock. The few companies that make them. So I'm going to make my own. Just simpler. Oh, I'd never go to Lowe's without feeding the fish first. Now this time of year, Rutherford is really in beautiful mode. All the flowering trees are out. It's really pretty spectacular. That's what I love about Lowe's. They have everything. And here's the piece of steel we need to make our lowering links. And one thing nice about living in Rutherford, we are close to everything. Lowe's, Home Depot, all the big box stores. And we do have our piece of steel. I'm back from Lowe's with our material now. If this were the middle of the winter, I'd use the electric come along. I'm going to use the manual one and turn the bike around. And what that'll allow me to do, if this job goes longer than I expect, what I'll be able to do then is get some of the other motorcycles out to go for a ride. And because Miles is off of school this whole week, you never know when he could just show up at the garage door. So I want to be prepared for all contingencies. So the next thing I have to do is pull the back of the seat off and the seat so I can get the strap underneath there. Kind of a straightforward job, but what I want to do to protect the paint, I'll take some blue tape and just lay some blue tape on there so I don't scratch it taking it off, because sometimes I'm a little clumsy. You see that tape just protects the paint just a little bit. The zip ties, I always have 2 zip ties as a safety thing on this seat, because otherwise if that snap goes back, you're going for a ride. Now if I were taking a lot of parts off the bike, I would always put them in sequential order so that putting it back together I can just go backwards on it. In this case there's not that many parts have to come apart. Now I originally bought the mechanical come along. I found it so useful that I bought the electric one, which is a lot more useful. But in this case, when I'm going to have something permanently up for many, many hours and maybe interfere with a ride, I use the mechanical one. Not a big deal, just a little less convenience, but that's a tool every shop should have just for things like this. Now I've got the back end off the ground. Now I have to go down there. First thing has to happen, I got to take the exhaust system off. It would be very convenient if our new muffler came in the next day or so. But we never have all the choices. Anyway, this does come apart relatively easily now. Now I can take the bolt off down there, take the whole muffler off. Of course, I made all these brackets. I tried to make it that in the future, if I ever had to get this apart, it would be pretty easy, but there you go. Oh, it's my lucky day. And when you buy the Norton muffler, you don't get this bracket, of course. So while I have this off, this mid pipe, I'll clean it all up. Now, of course, every motorcycle is a little bit different. In this case, one of the things with just getting these screws off, of course, the exhaust system's in a way. We want to get these screws out, the bolts out. And then I want to take this link off and reproduce it with a hole 1 inch further up, and that should lower the bike. Doesn't sound right, but when you look at the linkage, that's exactly what has to happen. Now on a job like this, it really pays to have the big bar, because these bolts are really on there tight. And sometimes you have to use an impact driver to get them off. And sometimes when I've taken bolts like this apart, these didn't come out too bad. I've had some real problems in the past with the bolts that are, don't forget, everything's been sitting here and corroding for many, many years. And of course, if you could just go buy these off the internet, that'd be great, but okay, so we have the nuts off. It's time. We just got to tap the bolts out. We'll be able to pull that out, and the back wheel then should drop to the ground. So here's a handy little tip. If you tap the first bolt out, and this is now swinging free, of course, so it's only the other one that's holding it on. Now I want to get in position where I can put my foot under the back wheel, push up on the back wheel a little bit, take the tension off of this bolt. So once I push that bolt out, the back wheel's just going to fall to the ground. Because my arms just aren't long enough, it was a lot easier to just to take the tension off the swing arm so that the bolt is free, and then I can. And again, the whole idea of everything I do is that I usually almost always work alone, and I've got to be able to do things without the peanut gallery here. Sometimes Miles helps me though, I have to be honest. Karen doesn't really like laying on the motorcycles and getting dirty. Smart girl. So the sleeve came out. We got the sleeve out. Now I can push the bushing in. This one can come out this side. Get the bushing out of here. We'll put all fresh new grease on this. They'll look the same. This will come out. And we're ready to remake these parts. First thing, I cleaned off all of the grit from around the swing arm bushing. I'm going to put some nice fresh new grease on the bushings. They ride in needle bearings, by the way, so having some fresh grease in there, who knows if that's going to make it a lot nicer, a little nicer. It can't hurt, that's for sure. And I'll get the needle bearings re-greased and put these back in, so just so they're out of the way. Okay, now the way this works, if you were to buy these, you would find you'd have a piece that would have the hole 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 1 inch. Some amount different. Some of them, the Suzuki ones, have 2 and 3 holes I've seen. But it's 1/4 inch mild steel is not a real compelling reason to not make these. If you can't buy them, of course, if you can buy them, it's great, but we can't. So what we have, bar of steel from Lowe's. It's 1/4 inch steel. This is 1/4 inch material. We're going to put some blue tape on top of this. Maybe some green tape would be better. And lay out what we want to do, and then get over to the drill press and the grinder and cutter and make some parts where these holes are just, I think we're going to go with 1.5 inches longer than the stock part. But the nice thing is to replace these if you wanted to make it 2 inches or 3 inches. There's a limit, of course. Starting with, I think we'll start with 1.5 inches just to be safe. But the whole reason for doing this is that it's easy to change these parts out. In a matter of an hour, you can have these parts off the bike just like I just did. And then you can, in this case, another $5 piece of material, and you can make a set that's 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches, whatever. Now, from being a modeler, I'm used to dealing with center lines and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is just lay this out. I laid some tape on here. I can get this really, really close this way. I can get one end of it. What I plan to do is make one part and then bolt it together on one end and drill it the second end, both parts at the same time. That would be the answer. Now, if I took this dimension and to see if this works out. I don't know if this is going to work the way I planned. We're certainly going to find out. Again, sometime as you're going along with a project like this, you're improvising every step of the way, and we are right now. So that looks like that'll be doable. Okay, that has the look of, we could live with that. So the point is to drill up one part. And it's just no big deal on doing it. It's going to be, I think this is going to be a pretty relatively easy thing to do, but you never know. And we're not making a connecting rod or anything that has to be within 2/1000ths, but I do want to make it a workmanlike part. Now what I thought I'd try, instead of making 1.5 inches, I'll make one 1 inch and one 2 inch, and I'll be able to move it into 2 locations just by taking one bolt out. I just thought if I put this adjustment at the bottom, I can take the one bolt out, and without even disturbing, I probably don't even have to take the exhaust system off to make the adjustment. So that might be worth trying. I don't know. Anyway, the material's cheap enough, and we're going to find out right away. This is going to be the cut point. So first thing is to get over to the drill press and spot these holes and drill them. Now, one of the things that is critical is these 2 holes have to be in perfect alignment. For instance, if I were to drill it and we were off by a 1/64 of an inch, the whole thing would be cocked. There'd be friction that shouldn't be there. Not a good scenario. So the way to get all the parts the same is very simple. I will drill one hole through on both pieces. And I'll go measure this up. I have plenty of drills, so I have to get a precision drill. once I have that piece drilled within both pieces, I can put a bolt and a nut on there holding that together, and then drill these holes at the same time. That'll tell me that hopefully everything will be in perfect alignment by doing it that way. And that is, I can't think of a better way to do this. I think that's going to be the way to do it, and that's in the world of modeling, that's how you would make identical parts for motor mounts and different things like that. Now, because we want everything to be pretty precision here, we have plenty of precision drills. Ooh, got one right. Now, as always, drilling mild steel, the best is just keep the drill a little bit of oil on it and a low speed. I want these to be nice precision holes. Now, this is the whole thing to making this perfect. This bolt is a very tight fit through that hole. I bet there's probably 1/1000th of clearance, but it's not a friction. I can still turn the bolt. These are going to be, with this device grip holding it together, these will be drilled, and because the drill press is 90 degrees, I would assume everything is going to work out very precision. And that is the best trick, best way I know to make two identical parts. And if these aren't identical, it's going to be, we're going to be pounding those bolts in, and there'll be friction and everything there. The next thing, this is the bolt that's going to go in here, and boy, I want it to be a precision fit, nice and tight. I want to check every one of these holes. We did it with a precision machine shop drill, so it should be, well, we'll find out. And it's, of course, the exact fit of that. So that makes that an easy decision. Now, the one thing I wanted to do here, for my own benefit, I want to countersink these just to take the sharp edge off. And what that'll do, that'll make getting the bolt in, it'll self-align a little bit easier. But I think these are going to be good. You know what that does? It gives it a nice finished look. You don't catch a sharp edge there. When you go to put the bolt in, it kind of funnels it in. Now the next thing is I bolted these together, and I want to use the washer as a rough guide just to get rid of the corners, make that a little bit more like the radius we have on that part. Left, do the other arm, put the bolt down in this end. We'll have the ends nice and neat, very similar to that. Now that slag protective coating really does come right off. Not looking to make these all polished up or chrome looking or anything, but what I do want to get, I want to get a quick coat of primer on there and a quick coat of silver just to keep it from rusting. Self-etching primer would be just fine on this. Sealer primer will be even better. It won't really matter. We're not going to see these parts. I just don't want them to rust. Now, once that paint dries, we'll be ready to assemble this. In the meantime, while this is drying up, I ought to clean up. It makes quite a mess in the shop when you do work like this. Get it cleaned up. and we'll be ready to assemble. While the primer's drying, I got this all polished up, cleaned up, just to make it a little bit neater. While we're waiting for the real paint to dry, I can do some other cleanup in the back underneath the bike there, where it's easy to get to now without the exhaust system. This is the Krylon high heat paint that we bought for the radiator, that grill on the radiator. I guess I can use that up here. I just don't want this to rust. Now while I'm waiting for the paint to dry, I can get, this is an area it's very difficult to get in and polish and clean because the muffler's in the way. With the muffler out of the way, piece of cake. And it's always my opinion that while you have something apart and while you have access to this, getting it cleaned up and or polished or flitzed or everything, just a lot easier. Now I would say this is probably the best $5 investment, and a couple hours and $5, and you can make the bike a lot more comfortable every time you stop for a stoplight. Now the easiest way to deal with this is to just put this bolt in hand tight. It snugs up against the bushing, so there's always a little clearance, there's a little bit of grease behind it. And now, because these are relatively easy to get alignment on, I'm going to use the car jack it up just enough that I can slide the bolt through, and then lower the bike, because what's going to happen is that'll hold the bolt. I don't have to hold the wrench on the bolt on both sides. It'll just make installing it just a little bit easier. The car jack deal works so well, I couldn't believe it. You gotta get in here, push that in. Start this. I want to make everything hand tight to start with. It's hard work, but somebody's got to do it. Now I put it on the lower of the two settings to start with, and of course I can always change it. What's nice about this, to change this, I probably won't have to take the exhaust system off. I'll probably be, because I have the nuts on this side, the bolts can go out the other side. The way it was before, the bolts wanted to come out this side and hit the exhaust system, so this will be a nice little upgrade. So what happened when I took the bike down off the come along, I realized it was lower than I wanted it to be. It was really like a drag race bike. I didn't want that, and I'll show you what I did to make up for it. So what I did, because it's a pouring rainy day out there, these are the original parts I made up. And this setting here was too low for me. I didn't want it this low. So I wanted to do a thing that you do in aviation called interpolation. In other words, I don't know where I want this to be, so I'll cut this dimension in half. And what I did, I made a prototype part that, let me line this up. It's right in the middle of that. And so that should be closer. Now, because I have a bunch of this material, it's not a problem to just make new parts all the time. And I got the tools out so I can fine tune this, because I don't want to see what happens is if you make the bike too low, you got to modify the kickstand or get an adjustable kickstand. I want it to be that it still works on the kickstand. And I do have a foot on the kickstand I can take off if I want to. But being able to vary this, now I thought this was going to be the two variations. When I really should have done is left this hole out and made this one half of the amount. But that's how you learn, and because the material's cheap, this $5 part, now it's a $10 part. But I still have two sets of these. And because it's a pouring rainy day and there's no chance I'm going to get to ride today, I figured I'd use the power come along and make it easier on myself. Well, if there ever was a tool that I have enjoyed using and having, and it just makes it so much easier, and now I have the same thing with the jacking the swing arm up and down. It's a piece of cake to put it right back together. And that's what makes this nice. Once you have a system and you have extra material, you can infinitely tune this. It's like jetting a bike or trimming a model plane. It's very easy to do. Now, if this link, which is half of the first amount, if this is wrong in one way or the other, I can take the difference that it's out, divide that in half, and just make up another one. Now these things, I make them up in about 10 minutes, so I can actually have a whole stack of them. Now here's something I learned the hard way too. When I have the automatic, I drop this down little by little, one step at a time, and I want to see, this is the whole thing, I want to see it leaning enough to the side the kickstand is on before I ever disconnect that cable. And what has happened in the past, I've disconnected the cable and it was just a little too teeter-tottery and it ruined my whole day. I had to call a neighbor over to come and rescue me because there was no way I could put the bike down. But things that worked out great. The car jack was a giant thing that made this job a one-man job instead of a two-man job. It looks like from the way the bike is leaning now will be real close to what I really ultimately want. And if I had to, of course, you can buy the adjustable kickstands or you can cut a piece off and weld it or whatever. I wanted to use if I could, the stock kickstand, of course. But so far, we've learned a lot today. It's been a good education. I'm glad I can pass some of this on. So if you have an FZR, I would say the way to start is a half an inch when you make the new piece, not an inch. I started with an inch, it was too much, unless you're going drag racing or something. So here's the final information. If you make a part like this two inches is, I don't know that you'd ever want to do that. This would be kind of a drag race. It's really low in the back, and you've definitely got to get another kickstand, that's for sure. Now, what's really good is, now that I've learned this the hard way, I can pass this information on to you, is to go, this is a 1 inch gap, make the new piece a ½ inch. You'll still be able to use the regular kickstand, and the bike is lowered about 1 inch. But just, for me, it just makes it perfect. And unless you're 7 feet tall or you have big feet or whatever. It's a nice modification. It's a $5 modification. It makes the bike a lot more fun to ride. Now another nice little tip that I learned here, it worked well for me anyway, is with the weight on those bolts, you don't have to have a person on the other side of the bike holding the nut. You can just ratchet it right down. Now the parts that I made today, they're just prototype parts. I didn't paint them or anything, but I have the dimensions. Next time I'm at Lowe's, I'll buy another piece of material and I'll make some up and paint them and clean them and make them all pretty and everything. In the meantime, I'm just going to bolt these on the bike just because it's a lot easier than not having those. Without those parts, you can't stand the bike on a kickstand. And then we'll just have to wait till I get the other muffler. You will, of course, notice that there's always something to learn. And then if you so choose, there's always something to share. And when you can learn it and share it, it's the best of all worlds. And this is a great trick, letting the weight of the... But otherwise, you need an arm out there. Oh my God. Well, you need to get one of your friends to come over. All right. Okay, good to go. And the last thing is just to put the seat and the tail section back on. It was quite a day. Listening to this rain all afternoon, it makes me feel like I'm on a Titanic or something here. And I always put, there we go. See, now even though that's on there, that clip, I don't feel so good about that clip. I like to put one zip tie on each side. I found another little trick for this FZR seat is never tighten both of the bolts. Never tighten one bolt without snugging the other one up. It puts a stress on the seat. And because we're using lock nuts now, that's not really tight. I'll go do the other one and then back and forth tighten them up. Well, today was one of those days where we learned a lot. I hope we've been able to share a lot. And I couldn't be happier. I've got the bike about 1 inch lower. I've got a spare set if I want to go drag racing, which I don't. And I got the kickstand. I took the little foot off and it's got just about the right amount of lean. It couldn't have worked out any better. So, and it's such a rainy, crappy day. Now the only thing I'm missing now, I'm missing the muffler. There's no point putting the old muffler back on. The muffler may be here tomorrow. I don't know. I got to call Dime City and see. Anyway, we are really, this is one of those things.
At the end of a day like this, you can't explain it to somebody that doesn't do this kind of work. You really feel satisfied and feel like, wow, we're going to be ready to ride this baby soon, get out on the open road. This has been a project. We're in the 7th month. It couldn't have gone any better, except for that crash. Or if I found the fountain of youth. Anyway, beside the point. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. Share it with your friends. Share the videos. Share your whole life. Thanks for watching.